Thank you for joining me for another quick hits conversation where we have unscripted conversations for curious minds. I'm your host, Dr. Robyn, aka Mental MacGyver. I provide high performance support and coaching to executives, founders, celebrities, and athletes. With me today, I have Carol Cho. She is your personal CFO, making financial planning and everything else related to your money simple. I have Dr. Rhonda Bompensa-Zimmerman. She is an experienced director of fitness and health, working in the public health space, and she runs ultra marathons. And I have Dr. Jesse Carrie. He is a doctorate in chemistry, a degree in history, and is currently a senior scientist at the Idaho National Lab. The question I have today: what advice do you have about red flags you've seen or heard in an interview? Jesse, kick us off.
I was interviewing for a position at a university a number of years ago, and there was kind of a competition between, I guess, two factions at the university. And the one guy, he's a little under the weather. He was not feeling his best, but he actually literally said, "I have no idea why they brought you in here today." And it was just like, okay, if you want like the flashing red light thing going off, I think that's about as strong as it gets. So that's kind of my example. So if you get something like that, you can know, yeah, I think I'll probably take a pass on this one, just even if they do actually decide to go forward.
Carol, what about you?
I was talking to my partner about this, and there was a job that he applied for, and we were kind of going through the online application process together. And you can tell how long the process was going to be because at the top it had like a little bar to show you how much more you had left to complete the application. And it was just moving at a snail's pace. And they were really just asking such specific granular questions. Things like, how do you identify, your pronouns? And then it went further on and it then asked, is there anybody at home that has a disability? And is there anybody at home that you are caring for with a disability? And that's when we both decided this is just probably not a good fit, because the questions really just started to become pretty invasive and very personal. We didn't understand what that had to do with the actual position. So that was a red flag for us.
Okay, great. Rhonda.
I have two scenarios that happened to me. One, I was interviewing for a position, and the lead person was questioning about my choice of clothing that I had, particularly my socks. So it just seemed like an odd question. I did actually get that position, and then later on he had mentioned something to me about that. But I just thought that was kind of strange. And then I learned, like body image and judging of females in particular was something that this gentleman did quite frequently. So I tried to have some conversation with him about how inappropriate that kind of is and how it makes women feel particularly uncomfortable. And then the other one was a situation where there was a merger. So I had a new boss from a different company, and they kind of were interviewing all the employees to see how they were going to transition us into a new space. And this gentleman, again, based upon my appearance, wanted to put me into space that I was not comfortable in terms of like marketing my looks to get business. And so I felt very uncomfortable, and I didn't feel like the ethics involved in this new leadership team was not my cup of tea. And I quickly exited myself out of that situation. I didn't look back. So that was really scary for me because I felt very almost violated.
My example is I was interviewing for a position and I asked the boss, tell me how much of your personal time, because you carry, at the time it was a pager, but basically how often do they reach out to you during the night or on weekends? And she said, well, for me, I always respond, but we will not expect that of you. And at the time, I believed her. And what I realized after I took the job, no, they absolutely expected you to respond and be on call 24/7. And I wasn't wise enough to realize that her hedging of, oh yeah, I do that, but we won't expect it of you, was false. So then the question that I have for the three of you, if you're in an interview and one of those red flags waves, how do you notice it in the moment? And then what do you do about it?
My husband actually had this happen. So he was interviewing for a job with a big shipper that everybody knows. The question was about overtime. Would you be willing to work overtime? And so he said yes. And then he probed a little further, like, what exactly does that entail? Come to find out, they were expecting, like, maybe in the beginning during the rush season, 12-hour days, 7 days a week. He said, well, for how long? I mean, he was willing to like maybe just give it a shot if it was like a temporary situation because it was around the holidays. But yeah, they like didn't have a definitive time frame for him. So that was like, oh no, like clearly they don't value you and your humanness. And if that's the expectation, steer clear from that.
Yeah, I was going to say something that sometimes too is you were mentioning earlier the Monday morning quarterback, and after the fact you realize, oh wow, that was like a huge red flag. I should have caught that. But you had the initial gut reaction, kind of gut feeling that something's not quite right here, but you proceed anyway. So I think that's one of the big things that's there. I think most thing is it's not until you've been burned that you realize maybe I should listen to my gut or like kind of that sixth sense a bit more before I proceed.
I agree with that. It's just trusting your intuition. I think individuals recognize a red flag. They'll start to feel like, ooh, this is an opportunity I do want to pursue, or this is an opportunity I don't want to pursue. And I would really encourage people to kind of trust their gut, that instinct. And if you're in that situation where you're like, ooh, this is a red flag, I don't want to move forward, be as professional and complete the interview as best as possible. Use it as a learning experience. Perhaps use the rest of the time with that person in the interview to just kind of maybe practice some other interviewing skills, knowing that this is probably not an opportunity that you're going to pursue. But yeah, trusting your gut and then just using the time to make it into a learning experience.
I one time said to someone in an interview like that, where I realized this is not a job that I want. I said to her, I said, well, I currently have a job, so help me understand why this would be a better position for me than the position I currently have. And she got really offended and angry, and which just cemented for me, like, nope, this is not a place that I want to work. Do you think that young people now are better at saying no to these abusive kind of positions than maybe we were when we were younger?
I was going to kind of steer the conversation a little bit to also paying attention, not to just the questions, but the body language, the tone, the feeling in the space. If everybody's zipped up and like so serious and there's no smile or like that warmth, authenticity, like for me, that's a red flag. I think the younger population, they're a little more apt to push back a little more and notice, oh no, this isn't going to work for me. I mean, that's just what I've seen. We were kind of less apt to question or feel empowered to interview the interviewer, so to speak. Because I definitely, that's been the switch in me. I will interview the interviewee, yeah, to make sure that that works for me. So, and I think young people are more in line with that kind of focus.
I think so too. I think that the younger generation, they have a better sense of who they want to work with and how they want to show up. So I think as a result, they might be better at saying no. I just feel like that's not my generation, I think. And especially also culturally speaking, I was born in the US, but my parents are from South Korea. So I'm the daughter of immigrant. And so I think culturally speaking too, I would show up kind of with a different perspective of just, okay, just accept what they give you, right? Like bow your head down and don't ruffle the feathers. And one of the things I appreciate about the younger generation is that, you know what, like you don't have to stand up for some of these things, right? Like you can ask for the things that you want and that you are worth it. So it's a little bit of a mix, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say on that note, I don't really have too much of the interviewing of that stuff on for the young group, but I'm working with some people I work with right now. They are, technically I'm a millennial. I'm the eldest one, but the decade plus younger than I am. They definitely speak up a lot more for what they want compared to, people my age or a little bit older, especially in the same age. Pretty interesting.
There are two questions that I always recommend someone ask someone who's interviewing them. One is, what do you love about working here? And then the other is, what do you dislike about working here? And then pay attention to those answers, because if you get a lot of corporate mumbo jumbo and you don't get a personal, this is how I feel, for me, that's a red flag, because it means they're not allowed to share their personal experiences in the organization. And it's not a psychologically safe place to be. That for me is super important. Is it psychologically safe? And recognizing when you get corporate mumbo jumbo is for me a red flag.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, that is our 10 minutes. So I'm going to cut us off there. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with interviewing. I think that we could do a lot to help people be better at interviewing for jobs and recognizing those red flags and not ending up in those jobs, which we look back and go, I shouldn't have taken that. Been there, done that. So thank you so much, and I look forward to speaking to each of you again very soon.